heroes acting out there on a silver screen. Come grab a seat, popcorn is on me.
Camera speed.
Sound production, take one.
Hi, Noel, Team Manning II here for Meet Me at the Movies. And if you're listening to the radio version of this, that's probably through Cinema Scene. And if you're checking us out on Elements of Madness, we appreciate that as well. We always say no matter how you track us down, we're just thankful for your time and appreciate you feeling that there's something worthwhile in these shows. Very happy to have Ross Riege as our guest today. Ross is a cinematographer, been involved in film and TV for quite a while. Ross, good to see you, man.
Yeah, you too. You too. Glad to be here.
Yeah, really glad we could do this. And I know you've got a new project that everybody's going to get a chance to dive in on. The Walking Dead is something that, unless you have been dead for the past, I don't know how many years now, you've probably heard of this little TV show called The Walking Dead. And there's been a successful spinoff. There's been some web series, and now there's another spinoff that's looking at this world of The Walking Dead through a different lens, and that's called World Beyond. And you're heavily involved in that, so we're going to look forward to having you talk about that. But before we do, I really want to get back to your roots, to explore where this love of cinematography came from. What was it that sparked that interest, and what was it that continued to make you pursue it?
Well, I'd have to say, it was definitely one of those. There's a lot of people that I work with now that kind of came up and they were film geeks from the beginning. Watching movies as they were kids, and I was not that. I was watching, even in high school, I was watching Dumb and Dumber and Happy Gilmore were my favorite movies growing up. So I didn't have that pedigree going in, and I'd be lying if I said that I was a big film geek in my younger years. But what I was into was stop motion animation and puppetry. Weirdly enough, a friend of mine and I did a lot of those projects with that in high school. We had a class that we were able to, instead of writing a report, we could make a video. And so that was kind of our foray into, same thing.
Yes.
So we were both doing that. And, and then came the college decision time, and we were both like, well, we should probably do like film and television or something like that. And he went out to USC and became a director, and I went to NYU. And when I first went there, I knew I was interested in it as an art form, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I did a lot of still photography and kind of fell into it in a way because there's so many writers and directors at film schools, and especially where I was kind of like, I'll shoot your project. And that just kind of became the start, and I loved it. And that's really the beginning for me. So, here I sit today.
Yeah. So as you think back to photography and understanding the concepts of framing and lighting and angles, how much of that helped you once you made that transition into to cinema and television?
Well, I think it gave me a shorthand in terms of the technical side of the photographic experience. In an interesting way, I think sometimes if you're learning from scratch just in the cinema mode, things like shutter speeds and things like that are not as in the forefront because there's a kind of a standard, you're shooting 24 frames or whatever, but realizing that when you're shooting in still photography, there's so many different things you can do, bulb exposures and short. So in an interesting way, I guess still photography gives you this kind of breadth of technical experience that you can bring to the photographic side in cinematography, but there's a whole breadth of things that you don't even learn in film school. Maybe now it's a little bit different than when I was there, but just in terms of coverage and blocking and camera modes, camera support, all that other stuff is like, you learn by experience, learn by talking to people. But I think the foundation of having a little bit of technical knowledge about exposure and that kind of stuff goes a long way, especially for me. I'm in that age group that learned with chemical photography.
Right.
and saw the change in digital. And so being able to do a little bit of both or understand both, I think was a great way to learn, at least. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember the best piece of advice you got early on as you were getting your feet wet in this and trying to kind of find your way? Yeah.
I would say the first notable thing wasn't so much then, but a little bit later on in my career. I've worked a fair amount with a director that does a lot of commercial stuff, does a lot of documentary stuff. And the way he always described working when I started getting into the documentary sphere was this idea of respond, don't react.
Yeah.
And that's a thing that, I mean, to this day, I'm working on a project right now where we talk about that a lot, the director and I, about the constant change in what happens during the day. You have a plan set forth, and things are ultimately always going to change. And I think one of the things that is best, whether you're a DP or a director or an AC or a grip or whatever it is taking those things in stride and being able to adjust. And instead of getting emotional about it or getting upset about it, it's okay, what's the new solution? And that's something that, whether you're shooting a documentary or shooting narrative or scripted or whatever it is, I think goes a long way. And so I would say that maybe it's not the earliest piece of advice, but it's probably one of the most like bedrock level MOs to have for me that I've found fruitful.
I think respond instead of react. I think there are definitely differences in what those mean. And I think that's awesome. And I may have to borrow that, and I will credit Ross Riege for that if I decide to use it. That's awesome. Do you remember the point when you realized, wow, I can do this? I'm actually decent at this, and maybe I can have a future in this. Do you remember what that point was or what that project was?
Oh, man. Well, I think that there's two levels to that, because I wouldn't have pursued it and been as ambitious to hit my parents up for money to go to college at an expensive college nonetheless, if it wasn't something I felt I had a future in. And I think that's the first step is the confidence in pursuing that at a younger age. But there's also so much fear involved with that, because you don't really know for sure if you can. And for me, I'm from Wisconsin, so I moved to New York, and I made the step at 18 years old to not just move out of my house, but move to a city like New York, which there is no city like New York.
Right.
And that was probably 60% of my education was just being solo in that city. So that was a big step. And then I think after that, I would have to say at least the next 10 years was just nerves. It was, how low do I let my savings account get until I have to abandon ship,
Right.
And to a certain extent, even to this day, just because of the nature of our business, you're kind of, what's the next gig going to be? Is it going to be something that I'm inspired by? Is it something that is a step for me? And so I don't think I can point to a specific spot where I'm like, okay, but I've always felt all along I can do it. But as we know, in our business, it's not just about being able to do it. There's tons and tons of talented people that don't get the breaks. So I think part of it is just that serendipity, and it really ends up just being about being grateful for the opportunities you get and seizing them.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I will echo the opportunities aspect and kind of that nomadic lifestyle of working in film and working in television. I was planning to pursue film for a living back when I was in college, and filmmaking was where I was headed. Cinematography was the love I had, and it's still the love I have when I'm enjoying it from this end, when I'm engaging in it as an audience member. Worked on Last of the Mohicans. It was shot in North Carolina, where I live, and had a chance to spend a summer and a fall on that project. And I just remember the people I met, it was very nomadic. They knew that they were locked into this project, and unless you were the assistant directors or the director or the cinematographer, the rest of the crew some of the, well, not all of them, but a lot of the cast and crew were like, okay, so what's going on next? Can you set me up with something? What are you working on next? And there was that. And that's when I realized for me, I was at that time falling in love with who is now my wife of 25 plus years. And I knew, okay, I want to have roots. And I was a little bit older when I came to college anyway. And so I said, yeah, I still want to be involved in this in some way and somehow, but maybe the feature film route is not for me. And I'm glad that I chose not to, but I'm equally happy that I'm still connected to it. And I've been doing involved in film reviews and film interviews going back to that time. And so much of that was because of the networking and because of the friendships I developed and the people I got to know. And you're right. It's you have to be ready and willing to see what's next. What adventure is around the corner?
Yeah. And that's part of the thrill, but it is like you're saying, I've got my daughter's about to be 2, my son's going to be 4 in a couple months. And, and for us, meeting my wife, that was part of, we met when I was in the middle of a show. And so there's a lot of kind of, is this a thing that we can handle? But, as the kids start growing up, you really have to, it does amplify your, the stakes when you make decisions. And if you can be out of town, there's a lot, as we know, as we're talking about, there's a lot of stuff that isn't just shooting in LA
right.
or New York. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
So,
that's
Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a flick with me?
Hi, I'm Steve Putnam, and I'd like to invite you to join me for the next Talk of the Town. Each week I get to meet with some of the most interesting people in Cleveland County, and each show is packed with information you need to know to stay connected to our community. From promoting upcoming events to discussing local subjects that impact you, Talk of the Town has a little something for everyone. Plus, we're on every day, so it's easy to catch up with us. That's Talk of the Town, every day, every week, right here on C19 TV, Cleveland County's channel.
Education is our most powerful tool to improve and change our world. Hi, I'm Rhonda Benfield, your host for School Matters. Join me for a new program every other week with information from and about the students and staff of Cleveland County Schools. Discover what our schools are doing to challenge students and help them reach their full potential. You can catch us on Spectrum Cable Channel 19 or stream us live on c19.tv.
Hi, I'm Shara Miller, the host of Artworks. Each month we bring to you wonderful, talented artists from here in Cleveland County and the region. We have artists, we have potters, we have painters, we have musicians, we have actors. We just have wonderful artists that come to you and tell you about all that they're doing, their creativity, what inspires them. Join me here on Artworks each month on C19. You can also watch us online at c19.tv.
Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a flick?
Well, let's transition to this new project that people are going to get a chance to check out, The Walking Dead World Beyond. Were you a fan of the previous Walking Dead original and then the spinoff as well?
I had seen the first season and a half, I think, of the original when it, maybe a year or two after it came out. So I was really hooked in the beginning. And then just by virtue of so many media options, I fell off the wagon, and I never watched any Fear. And so it had been obviously a number of years when this project came up. And so at that point, I went back and of course rewatched the first season that night. And I didn't get through the entire season that night, but I got through half of it. And it reminded me of all the things that I appreciated about it as a show. What they did in the way they set it up was so filmic, especially, you compare that to something, to a new series, for instance, right now on a streaming platform, you get that super high production value. And I feel like the approach right off the bat was not to make a TV show, but it was to make a cinematic experience, series.
Yes. Yes.
And so to a certain extent, there were definitely episodes that they kind of handed to us as like, hey, check this out, check that out. Here are some world building things that you should be aware of. and things that we liked, things that we're exploring on Fear and the original. But I think it was a little bit of a benefit to look at how it originated and say, when we're starting up this new spinoff, how can we not just give due credit to that, but approach this in the way that it should be, and the material is something that shouldn't just be passed off as a procedural third spinoff, as some people might pass it off to be. I think it really has its own life. It's very tied into the universe and the audience, but at the same time, it was, one of the specific directives was it needed to stand alone visually from the other shows. And I was like, oh, this is great.
I was just a little kid.
Just in an authorship sense.
Right. And even in the storyline standpoints, there's very much a coming of age aspect to this approach. And you get some of that, of course, in the others, but this one is, I think, the core of that really is a coming of age within this world of zombies. And how was your approach different with that in mind?
I know it is.
Well, when I started, I mean, that was, again, one of the things that attracted me to it was that we're taking something that's been an established property and looking at it through a different lens. And I, for whatever reason, am drawn to the lens of youth. And especially, again, as somebody with Midwestern roots, and just remembering, playing in the woods, bashing sticks against trees, and just all the dumb stuff you do as a kid. That's the most amazing experience to you as a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old. All of that stuff is stuff I get to tap back into when we're dealing with this, and that's so something I was really excited about. And so from the beginning, that was in our early conversations. It was all about what is the viewpoint of the lens, for instance, and as we experience the story and the plot developing through the eyes of our kids, in essence, how are we looking at that? Because there's a lot of stuff, especially in the beginning of the original series, that they play a little bit longer and further away and a little bit more doc style. And we just kind of, part of it is a moving target as you get going, but we kind of fell into a much more experiential viewpoint in the way we taught it. And so even as we're shooting the first few episodes, we're talking a lot about what we're liking, what's being used, and what we're embracing. And we just continued leaning further and further into this kind of loose and adaptive lensing and camera movement. And that just kind of, you get to a point with the show, especially when you're starting it off, that the show kind of finds itself and forces itself on you. And that's what's really rewarding about the process, and it's fun.
Yeah, I think with any project, they do develop this life of their own. I'm sure you have a director that has something in mind, but part of that collaboration process between everybody involved, the cast and the entire crew, it is a living, breathing thing when you're on a film set or a series set. And if you allow yourself, you can really find some amazing things that come out of that because of the collaboration.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also that, again, it's acknowledging and embracing the fact that things change.
Yeah.
And so, of course, the visual style of this show actually ended up lending itself to that a little bit. And we almost wanted to, it wasn't going as far as, let's not watch the rehearsals, let's just kind of see what happens. But it definitely was, you don't want to get so rigid that there's no room to move. And I think having a little bit of that looseness in the process just inevitably makes it feel a little bit more alive.
Right. Where was this project shot?
Based in Richmond, Virginia. And so we shot, I'm trying to think, maybe the furthest away from the production office in Richmond was about an hour away.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit less. So it was really centered in that area, and there's tons of rich locations there. And then, of course, we did a handful of, we built our own stage and did a bunch of stage stuff as well. But it was nice being in that city.
Yeah. Well, with a project like this and a world like this, production design probably plays such a huge role in what you're able to do as well. And that Again, going back to the collaboration, that partnership between the production design and the cinematography probably have to go hand in hand in order to find success.
Absolutely, yeah. And Tom, our production designer, he and I had actually worked together on a project years and years ago. It was one of the first things I did when I moved to LA. It was a tiny film, and I shot second unit stuff on it. But so we got a kick out of kind of catching up when we landed together in Virginia. But yeah, he super talented guy, his whole crew, and so we all kind of land there, and we're like, oh, where are you coming from? Are you, where are you transplanted from at the moment? But he was great, yeah. And you have to have a continued dialogue with them, especially when you shoot something that has when you're on location. It's about where are the windows facing and what practicals are in the room. And as you get going, especially for us, you get less and less time to talk with this person, and and stay in touch as you are when you're prepping. And so it's hey, when we establish a new set, I want to make sure that my electricians are able to get in and rig up all the practicals, and I need adjustments on them, and where are the best places for those practicals to be. So there's a lot of handshaking that goes on that you, if you don't really lean into that relationship, I think it's really difficult, not only to work, but to get something that you're all looking for and excited about. And so we were fortunate that was a great working relationship, and being able to lean on that person is great. So.
For you as a cinematographer, who do you find, well, we'll speak specifically for this project, who do you find has been the most valuable crew member for you in the success of what you're wanting to present to an audience?
Yeah, well, in this case, I'd have to. I mean, it's really hard, as you can expect. It's hard to make one. I can speak to position and say why they were so critical.
Yeah.
I think if I had to pick one, I think my A operator was the most important, to have a person share my brain. And I was fortunate to have a couple great A operators that I do have that relationship with. So I'd say that's number one, but it's also a huge grip show, given that we're going on location, and weather was changing a lot, especially in the first half of our production. The middle to late summer in Richmond is very volatile, as we learned. So there's a lot of that and creative problem solving there. And then of course, like I mentioned earlier, when we're converting a warehouse into a workable stage, with not only standing sets but swing sets, everybody is thinking creatively, because you don't have the perms and the green beds and all the conveniences that you might be used to in different places, and so you're starting from scratch, and so it's really a meeting of all the minds.
Yeah. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. It's hard, I know.
No, it's as most people would probably say, it's all of the people are, well, you just lean on everybody. Yeah. It's such a collaborative medium, as you know, and
absolutely.
I think that's one of those things. The operators is really, it's a tough thing. It takes time and experience together to kind of share that brain and get the shorthand.
Yeah. So with this new project, The Walking Dead World Beyond, of course, if you are familiar with the universe, it's going to be an easy transfer for those who have been involved and watched any of the others, whether they've watched all of them or not. If they're familiar with it, it's going to be an easy transition. What if you are not familiar with this universe? How standalone do you feel this show is without any background?
I think it stands alone. I think much in the way that, like, when I rewatched the first episode, you kind of are thrown into the universe wherever you start, and part of what makes it rewarding as a viewer is that you're not just handed kind of the Bible of here's what's everything that's going on. You don't get this kind of long intro like Star Wars style that tells you all the stuff that's going on. You just kind of find yourself there. And part of the thrill of it, and the way I love they approach our season, and I think it holds true through all of their stuff, is that you learn things along the way, not only about what is going on in the world, but what's going on with our characters and who are they. So I think it stands alone, but I also think it's a great thing, because if somebody's coming into this and watches this first, I would see it would be completely logical to go seek out the earlier series as well. So, and they all work in concert together, which is great.
Yeah. I guess you mentioned Star Wars, much like The Mandalorian, which is an amazing series that if you're familiar with the Star Wars universe, then of course it makes sense. But that was such a well-written, well-directed, well shot. I mean, that series, The Mandalorian season 1, was just brilliant on a lot of different levels for me. And even if you did not have any connection to the Star Wars universe, you could still easily let that be your first journey into the Star Wars universe, and you would find yourself wanting to go back. So it sounds very much like this could be that same thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Ross Riege, our guest right here. Ross, if our viewers and listeners wanted to follow any of your work, do you have social media, websites, any of those places you'd love to send folks?
Yeah, I've got an Instagram and a website. As everybody does, Instagram seems to be the most kind of current thing. I put personal stuff on there, I put work stuff on there, and of course the website is good too. But yeah.
Thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate everyone who's taken the time to be with us today, no matter how you choose to do it. And until next time, I'm Noel T. Manning II for Ross Riege. That's a wrap.
Thank you.
400 years ago, my patriarchal ancestor, Lawrence Rutherford, founded our town. Anyone see the resemblance?
I definitely see it. It's in the jaw, the shoulders, the chest, and probably some other places.
Okay, thank you. I am the steward of my family's legacy. That will resonate throughout history.
And you have a museum.
You're gonna get yours too.
This is a ginormous casino. But nobody wants to help my cultural center.
The only native artifacts in here are those bangs.
You seem smart. I'm guessing lots of college. Not Ivy League, but so close it drives you crazy.
Northwestern.
Nathan, I'm calling to request a response to Mayor Chisenhall's decision to move Big Larry.
I'm sorry, what? The problem is not Big Larry. It's the road.
This is the 5th time someone's crashed into that statue. It's a public safety issue.
It's history, Deirdre. You can't change history unless you have a time machine.
And you don't, because if you did, you'd go back and tell yourself not to buy that blazer.
What? I'm gonna get this town on my side.
Yes. And I'm gonna transform my cultural center.
This town has forgotten how to honor their ancestors.
Can we focus on the problems that are actually important?
Well, Big Larry's important.
More important than the opioid crisis.
Apples and oranges, Carla.
There's something happening in that town. This is a story about stories.
The podcasting voice is very manipulative.
So much drama.
But let's leave them wanting
Okay,
more.
no, but I'm not done telling these people why they're wrong and stupid.
Many films to view until we meet again. Next time we see you, we'll gladly fill you in. We'll tell about the happy and the sad ones. We'll talk about the good ones and the bad ones. Many films to view till we meet again.